What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Dad's Bet Baseball team preview presented here, as always, by our friends Hall of Fame Bets. Make sure to use the code DADS. That's going to get you a 7-day free trial and 50% off your first month with that code DADS. We use Hall of Fame Bets all the time. We talk about it on every one of our shows. But make sure to go in there. They have just added a new feature around their AI insights for each of the different individual games. I was playing around with it yesterday. It is, let me tell you, I've seen the AI insight stuff done on a couple of platforms. I have not seen it done as well as it is done on Hall of Fame Bets. So make sure to check that out. They've got NBA, NHL, college men's basketball, got the tournament coming up here soon too. You can also use it for that. And you can use that code again, DADS, DADS, for Hall of Fame Bets. I want to welcome Vlad Sedler here to the show. Vlad, thanks for joining us. We are going to be talking a little Los Angeles Dodgers, a.k.a. the most hated team in baseball. Would that be fair to say? Would you agree with that statement?
It is. It depends where you're from, of course. Me being from Los Angeles, exactly the opposite case. But the team people are most envious of is what it is truly inside.
Yeah, I'm just going to tell you that as a Mets fan, they're the worst. They're actually the worst team, and that they should be considered the villain as such. So, but let's talk about, they had another just absolute banger offseason, and you are right, Vlad. It's just because everybody really is actually envious of everything that they do. And the offseason they won the World Series, and then guess what? They probably had one of the best off seasons of any team in baseball. So really not a lot of guys out from this team. It looked like we were going to see Keke Hernandez gone. He is back. Also just a non-Dodgers fan. I hate that guy. He's just one of the few players in baseball that really gets my blood boiling anytime he gets on base, because he doesn't get on base a lot, but when he does, he acts like he's there all the time. So they've got him back. They brought back World Series hero Miguel Vargas, and guess who else they also added? Kyle Tucker. Heard of that guy? Played for the Cubs last year, brought him in on a 4-year deal. Let's hope that he doesn't actually want to play baseball there, but he got brought on a massive 4-year deal for the Dodgers to play outfield. That actually addressed one of their biggest needs. Also, out of Queens himself, Mr. Edwin Diaz. Man, it is going to hurt my soul hearing the trumpets in Dodger Stadium whenever Diaz comes out on the mound, but that addresses another key issue that this team had.
That's going to be kind of badass, I got to be honest. Like, he's got one of the I'm a Phillies fan, and like Edwin Diaz has one of the more badass.
He definitely has.
It's going to be weirdly electric in Los Angeles. Let's be clear.
I'm almost going to have to root for like the Rams walkout music over him. Like, I'm going to start making that case. Whereas last year I would have never taken that argument. I would have been like, Diaz's walkout is the best since probably Rivera. So Miguel Rojas re-signed also, I think, and then also Andy Ibanez on a 1-year deal. I guess really their only real loss was Kirby Yates going over to the Angels. He wasn't really a factor last year in that bullpen as well. They've still got guys like Tanner Scott, who will also be in that pen, and Roki Sasaki, who they probably could bring back in the pen. It looks like they are going to have as a starter. But needless to say, Vlad, other than this team winning the World Series, give me the main thing you remember about this team in 2025.
First of all, before I do that, I wanted to say, I think Adam remembers this, that I was the one that introduced Keke Hernandez to DFS.
Yeah.
This is back when
wild thing.
Fantasy, baseball players are, obviously Brent Rooker and Vinny Pasquantino, those guys are pretty accessible. Maybe Jameson Taillon, but Justin Steele. But for the most part, these guys, they're not really talking to the layperson, whatever. But back in 2021, there was like this mispricing on FanDuel, I believe, where, everyone's salaries is in the thousands and his was like 200. And I tweeted him, I'm like, hey man, you have a chance to win us all some money, hit a walk-off, home run to, you're mispriced on DraftKings or FanDuel, whatever. And he responds, he goes, I have no idea what the heck that is, but it's impossible to hit a walk-off home run on the road. God, I forgot they were on the road. So I got punked by Keke. It's pretty funny.
I mean, the beloved Keke. Yeah, but yeah. Tell us, what do you like as a resident, as a fan, as an expert? What do you remember besides the big one?
It's a different feel there because Dave Roberts is such a consummate professional. They're so confident, him and Friedman in the front office, that they're comfortable slow playing. They know their depth, they know what they're capable of, and they know when they have to have their chips pushed in at what time of the year. That's why you have them slow playing guys early in the year. They're not pushing guys to get hurt. What I remember from the Dodgers last year was a lot of midseason struggles. And then, people kind of Dodgers fans worrying and what happened, what's going to happen in the playoffs. I mean, not really being worried, just kind of knowing that, the way they operate. They were second in the majors in runs scored last year, most in the NL, only the Yankees did better. They struggled against lefties a lot earlier in the season, which is pretty shocking. Usually their guys crush lefties. They were the best hitting team at home in baseball last year, and they were the best hitting team against righties. And this includes a lot of guys that were struggling, right? You had Mookie Betts starting off, getting sick overseas and then just completely just off an entire horrific season. You had Teoscar Hernandez that we just found out a few weeks ago had been playing most of last year with an injury. So there are some guys that struggled, and obviously there were breakouts. Andy Pajes really broke out. Will Smith had that incredible year. He was hitting 300 something till he got hurt. And then the pitching,
the rare homegrown guy, by the way, on the Dodgers. Not to cut you off, but like one of the people say that, but Will Smith's been there forever. So yeah. So I mean, overall, it's the results ended up speaking for themselves, but it was close, right? We could have had a completely different narrative. I mean, that game, World Series, went to the very end, and we could be talking about a whole different story right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think also to that point, Vlad, Adam and I had talked during the season quite a bit about this. Became one of I feel like Adam's signature lines is, well, it's oldest team in baseball, and that really does jive with how Roberts managed this team. I mean, again, statistically, they were awesome pretty much at the end of the season, but they did have some big swoons there. I think, like you said, July, August, I remember also having a pretty decent swoon. But when you've got Freddie Freeman, who was playing his age 35 season last year, Mookie age 32 going into 33. Even Ohtani, I mean, he's north of 30 as well. It's not like he's this young spry guy anymore. So you had a lot of guys on this team that are older veterans, but also it makes sense that they were going to possibly take some days off, and also knew that this was a roster that was going to be able to, do just fine in the playoffs. I think when we went through kind of targeting the teams based on, if you're looking at WRC plus, barrel, ISO, all of these different metrics, we had an episode on it. And the Dodgers, there was kind of 4 magic quadrants, and the Dodgers hit 3 of them. And they, it showed once they got to the playoffs. So, I mean, Adam, what was your take ultimately on this team, at least finishing the regular season and from a betting perspective? I kind of accepted not even midway. I kind of accepted in June that this team was I always say that the Los Angeles Clippers, actually, they're just load managing guys until the end. I mean, I was very early on. You always see this with Japanese players because it happened with Yamamoto too, but pitchers, their adjustments are always a little different because there's strike zones, there's all sorts of ways that there's prep. And so obviously you and I were really big on, well, we got to take his under Ks. There's a lot of hype here. And he actually showed up really well in the playoffs. Same thing with Yamamoto last year or 2 years ago where he was out and then he came back and he was incredibly dominant then down the stretch. The biggest thing I just remembered on this team, but it almost felt like Ohtani's MVP year was quieter than it was the year before. And maybe it's because there was a chase for 50-50 the year before and it was that kind of stuff. But, you could not tell me that there's another player that in the NL that was MVP.
I'm a Kyle Schwarber guy, and I'm like, no, it's not the same. And that's what stood out to me and it's probably because I was constantly betting Ohtani 2Ks and 1 home run SGPs, like constantly doing that, which is this very weird reverse correlation. But he had a, from an outside swing perspective, he was like terrible last year, but he also quietly put together still an MVP year. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing that just stood out. And I remembered about that team. And then there was a couple guys that kind of, as I dug in more, that caught my eye that aren't these, when I play like I had Mookie Betts for fantasy, and it was, out of the gate, it wasn't good. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to give up on him. It's Mookie Betts. And I kind of set this up by drafting too early. And so then I guess then what for me, it was just then kind of keeping an eye on like what would other stuff happen, because I think to Vlad's point, like Dave Roberts is really good at, well, how am I solving this with parts of a whole versus doing like this team, like 10 years ago, the Dodgers would never be doing bullpen games, and like they're perfectly happy doing that kind of stuff.
It's also, by the way, kind of wild that how good Ohtani was actually as a starting pitcher. And I had this whole impression that he sucked. Like that I was even, maybe it was just because of Ohtani fatigue, which maybe we'll talk about in terms of some of his markets this year. But I was trying to make the case of like, hey, like they're going to get all this credit for pitching and for hitting, but he's actually been a negative player while he's pitching. And then I went back and I looked at a lot of his advanced stuff for the 47 or so plus innings that he had pitched. This guy still had a 1.9 FIP, a 28.2% K- BB last season. Like, he was actually very much dominant coming back to the mound. And I think, weirdly, like my impression, and maybe folks in terms of just watching him, are going to be left with like that game 7. He looked bad from the start in that game, and it, other than the 10 strike, like he had that awesome game in the NLCS, but I don't know. There was maybe a little bit of a perception that like the pitching stuff wasn't quite back with him. And when you look at and dig kind of through all the advanced stuff, like, nope, he was still a dominant starting pitcher as ever. And he will be fully ready and fully available for this entire season.
Yeah, and in on the fantasy side, there's that unique capability of in most leagues, he's available as both a hitter or a pitcher. He's like one player, and for the most part, people are going to be using him as a hitter. Maybe later on down the season, if you really need pitching help, or maybe he runs into a 2-start week, you play him for 2 starts, you really need it. But that kind of is what makes him a little bit of a unanimous number 1 overall fantasy pick. I mean, Aaron Judge, obviously, hitting wise, if you're just going pure hitter versus hitter, you can go either way. And then, there's some leagues where Ohtani is separated as a hitter and pitcher. And I have people over at FTN asking me like, hey, where am I supposed to kind of slot him in for this? And I'm looking at it and I'm like, 1v1 valuations. I'm like, wait, higher, wait, higher. Like I don't want to do it, but that's just kind of where it is. And, in fantasy, it's also tougher because you're not going to have somebody on the Dodgers staff that's going to get you 180 plus innings. These guys are going to be.
I was going to point that out.
If there's
Yamamoto, only guy last season. Yeah.
Yeah. If there's one team that's going to try with a 6-man rotation and try to actually keep it, it's going to be the Dodgers. There's
one guy that you were really high on early for different reasons than everybody else. I remember listening on. I remember pretty much every segment you did last year before the season. You were talking about Ha-Seong Kim and him rebuilding his swing in the minors and then coming up. And he came up and he was not good. What's the latest on him? Because I'm looking at projected lineup and he's not in there, but I think it might be a platoon situation. Like what's his role going to be this year? And I think obviously having an off season and being able to retool and do some things is going to be better.
Yeah, I mean, guys coming over from Korea, from Japan, there's usually always a transition, and I really loved him, at least for the fantasy price. And
the stolen bases thing, you were like, you were on that ahead of everybody. You were like, watch, he's gonna because and he did.
He did, yeah. I think on like 13 stolen bases, but he didn't really get a lot of consistent playing time. That's the one thing with Dave Roberts is you're also kind of getting screwed out of there. But another season, like a full year with them now. He's a little bit more familiar with California, the culture, the team culture, and all this. And and Yamamoto, Ohtani out there that he knows. Obviously, they're Japanese. He's not, but this is an opportunity for him to at least earn strong side platoon for the Dodgers and hit near the bottom of the lineup. Essentially right now what's going on is it's Hyesung Kim, Alex Freeland, and Miguel Rojas, who are kind of fighting for that second base job, which is really strange because Rojas is a 37-year-old, more like a bench player, I guess, can kind of rotate everywhere. And this, of course, part of the reason is Tommy Edman is out. He's going to start the season on the.
I'm a big Tommy Edman guy. Like I loved that deal 2 years ago. I was just like, and it came through in that playoffs. But like I've always been a big Tommy Edman guy. And now he's hurt, but he's another one of those guys who can move anywhere and do that.
There's something about Edman being like a super slow healer. It's the same thing we had a wrist injury a couple of years ago.
It was really weird.
Yeah. The way I see it working out eventually is Rojas just being like a super platoon guy, and that Kim and Freeland can really rotate in there and really handle the strong side and short side. So Freeland can hit against lefties, Hyesung Kim against righties. So we'll see the way that works out. But I still like him. I mean, he's in drafts, he's going at like 500 ADP. So I'm all over that for some late round speed and maybe some average. You might be surprised he'll help with batting average.
What are your thoughts, Vlad? Another guy that I mean, he certainly got his shine, and we already mentioned him at the beginning of this pod. But Will Smith coming into this year, lifelong Dodger. He is a guy that we joke here about StatCast heroes, and basically the premise is. Like the O'Neal Cruzes, they're going to have these like crazy bat speed. Everything on StatCast is going to light up red, but in reality, they're kind of just sort of a mid or like fine player. I don't think that's the case at all with Will Smith. Like I'm looking on Handigraphs, and this guy is just a really, really good hitter from just all angles. I mean, he had a 345 BABIP last season, 386 expected WOBA. You look, he had barrel rate excellent, 12.2%, 47% hard hit rate. And this is also coming in the fact that he got hit in the hand at the beginning of September and really also missed some significant time. So he had 436 plate appearances. That probably should have been a lot higher than that. I'm looking for ways, if there is any possible way to play him in some capacity. And a couple of the markets I've looked at potentially is around like home run bands, but I'm just like fantasy perspective, betting perspective. What are your thoughts on Will Smith? Do you think there's any sort of value that we could probably find on him, or is he just too public at this point based on the fact that he, had the game winning home run of the World Series?
Yeah, there's always a little bit of extra shine on somebody like that, especially if they're on the coast or, Dodger, Met, or Yankee, and, they're well known. And of course, you have the most popular name in the world, like a Will Smith. That surely doesn't hurt.
He's recovered from that incident. He recovered from that incident.
I feel so bad that there was not a slap or Oscar joke that I just went through there. But yeah,
missed it. Yeah. The one outlier with him last season was the fact that he was hitting 300 for most of the season. He ended up 296. And that's really not who he is. He's typically a 250s, 260 guy. And the other thing I'll mention is he is just he's going to be limited in his in his totals. So I think potential unders is something I would look at I don't know if there's something like run and RBI combined, or just runs or just RBIs. Only because listen, he can have the 80-80 year, but the fact is he's going to be capped in the games played because they don't need him out there every day, and because the DH spot is taken. Right before Ohtani was around, there was opportunities for Will Smith and previous catchers Grandal to mix in at utility. I'm sorry, at DH. Once the NL started having DHs, now it's a bit of a different story. He's going to get those days off. Dalton Rushing is a top prospect. He's getting more confident. He's going to get more mixed in, and you're really looking at like 120 games, max. That's maybe like 525, 530 plate appearances. But those days when he had 578 plate appearances, 554, you're not going to see that anymore. The only issue with this whole thing is this is the Dodgers. If you're hitting fifth in this lineup around these studs, you're just going to get, runs and RBIs by the bucket. So that's kind of the counter argument.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad you talked me a little bit off. And it's funny you said the 260 thing, because I just went and looked at his batting average, and he is listed on DK. You can bet the over under their batting average for the season. 258 is the number. Minus 110 to the over, minus 110 to the under. So, because I was like, oh, maybe that will be a market that we could attack, because there might be plus money on the under. 258 is the,
but it's actually not bad if he only projects, because like I've been looking at that market more. But so if he has 600 for that market, if he has 600 plate appearances, then you need a guy with 150, 160 hits, because like you can't that's just how the math works. But if you subscribe to like Will Smith is going to not have more than 5, I think sounds like we could probably say Will Smith's probably not going to have more than 500 plate appearances, like probably around that. Then the math actually might work really well in it. I had to put it through, but that's like, it's an interesting way to do it, because like you said, like Dalton Rushing, like is very high. It like he's not blocked, but like they're going to give him playing time. Like they want to get him in there. And that's one of the markets that I had looked at him too. I was like, why is this so much lower? And it's like, oh wait, because it's kind of putting it all together, that there's going to be less appearances, but that means that if you only need 140 within 500, you could get to that and do that.
Yeah, the one thing about Will Smith until this year, like year to year, if you're looking at his like per plate appearance production, it's very like over the course of like per plate appearance and over the course of the season, he's been one of the most consistent, most predictable guys. Like I know, batting average is the result. It's not the underlying metric. But before you hit 296, he was literally in this band of 12 batting points. He was between basically 250 and 260 for 4 or 5 consecutive seasons. Like you just kind of know exactly what you're getting. Going to get 16 to 18 home runs. You're going to get 70 to 75 RBI. Just a matter of you have to do the math. How many plate appearances is he going to have? So he's very projectable.
So let me ask you this, Vlad. How, and I think this is a good sort of segue into, I was looking for a way to back a player, and we are getting more to a consensus that, hey, actually, maybe you want to try and look for an under on some of these different types of like milestone, season long props for a guy like Will Smith. Tell me how does this not work this season? Because I think that while this team is obviously from a roster construction and on paper standpoint, I don't think anybody would be foolish enough to make the case that there's another team that on paper is rostered better than the Dodgers currently. Maybe Adam will try to argue the Phillies with Adolis Garcia or something here. But when I saw the win total at 104.5, I immediately texted Adam and said, under. Like this is unprecedented for a team to open up with this type of win total. And again, this team won 93 games last season. Even with the Pythag, they still would have been under 100 wins. Where is the weak spot here? Like what causes this to not work this season? Is there any way that we could possibly find some long shot value on a team like the Giants or another team in the NL, right? Like that's kind of what I'm really most curious on.
So I feel like we probably you guys are professional bettors. I'm not, but I've been around the space for a couple of decades. I feel like there's a finite amount of resources you can spend on something. And I feel there are so many better spots to bet in on than the Dodgers win total. And I've seen it drop, or at least where I was looking, it was 102.5. A lot more reasonable. The Dodgers have, for their last 8 seasons, they've gone over that 102, and that's excluding the COVID year. Not necessarily helpful data, but this is the best team basically. Like on paper, this is the best looking team. The ways that it can go wrong, there's a lot of ways it could go wrong. They all these guys are in their mid 30s, high 30s. Like Ohtani goes down, Tucker gets another shin injury, Freeman with his, ankle, calf, whatever. It could very easily be affected. And I don't know if you guys saw what they're doing in the minors, like the type of guys who might make their team, like the guys they're signing. These are the no name, like busts of the past, like Keston Hiura is, on the roster, NRI. Santiago Espinal, he was actually a all-star a few years ago. Nick Senzel, the ghost of Nick Senzel. might actually make
all these
this
Reds.
team.
All these
Jack Suwinski, Michael Ciani.
I saw that one the other day, and it's when they picked him up, and I immediately had this like forward vision. I'm like, Jack Suwinski is 100% going to hit a pinch hit home run to win a Dodgers playoff game this year. It just like I guarantee that's what's going to happen. Like it's just we know it. Like that's all he does, and like he's like a new Matt Stairs. Watch.
Yeah, it's a strange roster. And the thing that sucks is I don't know if you guys know much about this dude, Ryan Ward. He's like a 28-year-old like minor leaguer. He's been crushing, like literally one of the top producers in the minor leagues for the last few seasons. 30 plus bombs, 120, RBI. And he just can't get a look. He can't get a look. The guy cannot get a look in the lineup. And so I'm always like, sometimes you just want to free guys. I'm like, years ago it was free Miguel Vargas. Like Miguel Vargas is a good hitter. Get him somewhere where he can hit instead of him sitting on the bench. And so look, now he's the White Sox possible cleanup hitter. It's very cool for him. But a guy like Ryan Ward, I would just like to see him get some playing time.
Yeah, I there's also just. I think that so speaking of like playing time, there's a lot of these like young guys. Like we had I don't know if you know Javon Alford, but he was on here. Yeah. But he's really good at he's our Keith Law. He's our Keith Law, and he just comes in, he'll name drop a bunch of guys like you should look at. And this Dodgers farm system is fantastic, and if people don't believe it, they can actually look at all these other teams and realize, oh, that player was originally drafted by the Dodgers and then he got good on another team. Go figure. And one of those guys who I was really big in a couple of years ago and then went down is River Ryan. And I want to hear like, and I know this is really gonna be fancy because there's not really a betting opportunity on River Ryan, but is he the stud of this pitching group that comes in? Like what's River Ryan's ceiling this season and beyond, and should I even be caring about him for fantasy purposes?
So unless you're doing unless you're crazy like me and you're doing these 50 round draft and holds, then probably not. Okay. He's somebody that you could probably pick up, I think, during the season where you hear that he's doing well in AAA and you think somebody's playing with an injury. You want to grab him before that, because once in the rotation, that's it. Like he's going for the top fab dollars and everything. But he's a stud. I think the best of River Ryan comes like after this year. This is his kind of rebuild year. I think you'll have some ups and downs, so he'll have some rough starts. But I think he'll make probably 8 to 10 starts in this rotation. Like who knows what happens, right? Like, it's just Tyler Glasnow has never pitched 150 plus innings. Yeah. Blake Snell has been something, dealing with his elbow for
what's going on. Yeah. Actually, what's going on with that? That's something we should talk. Like, he always is weird in the beginning of the season, but this is the first time where I've heard, oh yeah, it sounds more legitimate hurt. I don't even like what's going on with him right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's just it's a little bit more of him being slow played because they don't really need him to start off in the rotation to start off the year. But he is dealing with some, I believe it was elbow discomfort. I don't know why all these injuries start to wrap in together. But he's just not quite right. He's not throwing full speed. He seemed to be fine when I was at a Kings game and they were celebrating him. LA hockey game. He was chilling. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that's a type of like kind of buying opportunity where like as soon as there was like, oh, Blake Snell may not be available in opening day, he drops from an ADP in season long fantasy of like 65 to like 120, 130. Like best balls, like nobody wants. And Blake Snell is always available. And those are good buying opportunities because if you're getting the last 4 months out of him, you're still getting 120 plus innings. The ratios will be great. The strikeouts will be up there.
15K per 9 is nice on one of those.
I know when he returned last year, I think it was a start in Tampa, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But we were immediately on him. We're like, okay, like start betting Snell because this is what he does every season. Is he comes back from injury and then he's awesome, and he was great until the playoffs, really, until he ran into the Blue Jays. But otherwise, like people forget he actually was very, very good in his other playoff starts prior to the World Series.
Yep, and it's a shoulder. My bad, shoulder, of course, for him. Elbow would be scarier. Yeah.
So I guess there's one more guy I want to talk about that I want to talk about through a market that's a pitcher, and then we can kind of get to like win totals and just like some projections. And by the way, this year I'm going to do So Matt Brown from VSiN is going to do, we've agreed we're going to do like a high stakes best MLB best ball together or something.
Nice.
I'm seeing him in like a week and he's like, you're really going to do this? I'm like, yeah, it's time. Cause like I have all these guys that I really want to have investment in for the future for like a season. And I do fantasy, but I want to do a good one. I'm a big Emmett Sheehan guy. And I feel like that's one of the dudes that has been, that is definitely not on the radar. Absolutely has a spot. What's really funny is when you go to sites and you look at projections, his projections are all over the place. Like Steamer loves him, and I agree with the Steamer projection. I have him for I took him for 150 Ks at 2-1, and then 160 Ks at 3 plus 330 because I just I looked at all his stuff last year like. He had an elite swinging strike rate, which is like the number one thing I care about. Is especially Same. With ABS, I want swinging strikes. His first pitch strikes are great, so he's just controlling all that. He pitches 140, 150 innings. He absolutely smokes this, but all of his stuff is good. Is he like where's he kind of going in like drafts? Like, is he a guy that you like are wanting to back day to day? Is he just kind of going to benefit based on matchup? Like, like, is it real? Tell me about Emmett.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just real. It's like bona fide, like, legit, one guy gets hurt. He's the ace of this rotation. And in the high stakes, NFBC circles, like he's going up there. He's been going around 100, 110 overall. So that's like in the range of, not far after like Nick Pivetta, ahead of Sonny Gray, ahead of all the Savages and Mizorowskis and all those guys. So among like the second year guys, he's really, kind of really stands out. You're right, dude. The swinging strike rate, first pitch, everything, all that. He is just an absolute stud, phenomenal control. And also you've seen all that in the minors too. If you're looking at his like minor league swinging strike rates and all that, I know
they're bonkers.
Doesn't play. It's not the same obviously, but then he does it in the majors. Like, this dude is a bona fide stud, and they're gonna take it. The one thing I'm not worried about is like, moving him to the bullpen and no, things like that aren't happening. As long as he's healthy, he's going to be a workhorse in the rotation, and then it's just an inning